Okay, you are live now, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Welcome to the Snowy Valleys Council meeting on the Thursday, the 22nd of June, 2023. I'll now ask Councillor Ivel if he'd be good enough to give the acknowledgement of country.
Thank you. Snowy Valleys Council proudly acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of this land and water and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you, Councillor Ivel. I'll now give the preamble. Live streaming of council meetings. This meeting is live streamed on council's website to allow the community to follow council's debate and decisions. Members of the public participating in the meeting agree to have their images, voice and personal information, including names and addresses, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valleys Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be streamed. Councillors are reminded of the oath of affirmation of office they made under section 233A of the Local Government Act of 1993 and the obligations under council's code of conduct to disclose and appropriately manage conflicts of interest. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instructions given by the warden. Do not use the lift. Very good. We'll now go to apologies and leave of absence. We have a leave of absence application from Councillor Julia Ham.
I'll move that be accepted.
Been moved. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ivel. Move Councillor Thompson, second Councillor Ivel. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest?
Councillor Caffrey, I have one. I have two.
Sorry?
I have two.
Right.
I declare a pecuniary interest in relation to report 10.2 as I'm a member of the Adelong Progress Association and leave the room during the discussion.
Thank you.
And a non-pecuniary interest in relation to 11.4 due to membership of the Adelong Showground Committee, and I'll stay in the room.
Oh, very good. Thank you. No others? If not, confirmation of the minutes. Ordinary meeting, 18th of May. Is there a mover? Councillor Lart. Seconder? Councillor Ivel. Put the motion. Any debate? Any issues arising? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Correspondence and petitions. Are there any, Mr. General Manager?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Notice of motion of rescission. A notice of rescission. Direction to remove items under Roads Act 1993. Councillor Armour.
We, despite the fact that since the day that council chose to pass that motion, the 2 points of that motion have been enacted. So there's only the third point left. I just want to make a statement that I don't disagree with anything in relation to when council owns a road, council can require to be removed any obstructions that are on that road. That's not the issue here. I left that meeting wondering why a gate was an obstruction when it hasn't got a lock on it, why someone that didn't do a DA was told to build a grid when we have a grid and gates policy. What was the other one? Please excuse me because it's A.
Boundary fence.
And the boundary fence to be removed, when in fact you then have to put in a dual obligation on the two people that own that boundary fence. So to me, it seemed terribly haphazard and very confusing. So when I went home, I rang the gentleman that owns one of the boundary fences with the gate with the pink spot on it and said, do you really want that removed? Because it'll expose your farm to anybody to drive up there. onto the farm and you can't watch it from where you live. And he said, well, no, I don't. So there was definitely a difference of opinion there and what was needed. So I then went and put the notice of motion on that basis, because it really concerns me that we would be asking people to do things when we haven't quite got all our own ducks in a row, and we're not quite sure, because after that, things changed rapidly as far as what was a boundary fence, what wasn't, who should all parties be involved. Everything just changed. And in fact, until last week, there were still negotiations and changes happening. So there was a lot of issues that didn't make sense to me to have made such a decisive decision on taking action when we really didn't understand all of it ourselves. So I stick to that. I realise that 2 of those actions were carried out. What you want to do about the third one is up to the rest of the councillors to decide, I guess.
Well, it's up to you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, but Councillor Armour, it's up to you as to what you move. So I'm taking it from the rescission motion, that part of it, that you are moving to rescind part 3 of that resolution. That is the third part about seeking costs. But it's your choice as to whether you actually move that or not.
I would move that. And I would, with that motion, also put in that I would encourage much more discussion to happen going forward, see if it can be mediated out some other way, because it still has to be resolved. I don't know how I should word that for you, Jeannie.
Well, just if we can clarify that the second and third signature to the to the rescission motion, except that it's only part 3 thereof that's being moved.
Both seconders happy to do that. Councillor Hayes, Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
Right. Well, Councillor Armour, as the General Manager has outlined, we assume you're moving the rescission of section 3 of that original, what's the name? Is there any debate? Councillor Hayes?
Just to say that this is the consequence of a problematic development anyway. So, we've got to be very careful in what we approve and what the ramifications of those approvals are. I see a great need to try and resolve this situation and hope that there can be some sort of mediation with the people involved to resolve it and bring it to a quick resolution. Otherwise, it's going to continue to just be operating.
Just for council's information, I've arranged a meeting with Mr. Inglis tomorrow, and I'll be going out there to have discussions on him over the whole issue. So,
well, maybe you can try your mediation skills and see whether you can come back with a resolution.
Well, we'll see what we can achieve.
Good luck.
Thank you, Councillor. I appreciate your concern for my well-being. If there's no further debate,
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment? Councillors, I would just like to comment. I know the individual to which the directions notice was served has provided their personal views back to council, as part of which has been repeated at this meeting, and that is he's made the statements that the directions have changed throughout the course. I just clarify, and I put this in writing to the individual, that the directions never changed, not once. Council provided very clear directions. The directions notice was written by our solicitor, and the directions notice required the obstructions to be removed. It was only after the 28 days, after that direction was not followed, council then went in and removed the structures ourselves. When we removed the structures, we didn't remove the boundary fence gate for the time being, noting that when the road is constructed, it will be replaced at that time with a grid combination in accordance with council's normal procedure. So at no time was the directions notice amended during the 28 days in which the individual had the option of carrying out the direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. If there's no further debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Can we have a show of hands? All those in favour? Against? Righto. Well, I'll use my deliberative vote to vote against the motion, and I'll use my casting vote to vote against the motion. Right. The next notice of motion, I believe, is from Councillor Hume. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Someone going to move Councillor Hume in light of her leave of absence? Will
I'm happy
someone
to
move?
move.
Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Armour.
Sorry, Hansi, it's your mode. It's Hansi's.
Oh, sorry, my apologies.
I'm happy
Councillor
to-
Armour, my apologies.
I'm happy to second.
Second. Is there any debate? Councillor Armour?
Other than, I think, 30 days to go through an EIS of the size that the Hume Link EIS will be. 30 days is not enough for a community to digest that. And just like New South Wales farmers have moved to and applied and requested of Hume Link that they have been given a 90 days to get fair consultation happening, it would be good if we as a council ask for the same thing and ask for a 90 days.
Very good. Any further debate?
I'm only to support that, Mr. Mayor. You know, without seeing the document firsthand, we know it's going to be a huge document, and it'll be interesting to see how they've come up with a lot of their assumptions without having access onto the properties. So I think there'll be quite a bit of work to do to go through this EIS.
Look, I think it's important to recognise that there is a lot of work still to go on, and I believe our local members have been successful in getting the upper house of the New South Wales Parliament to embark upon a investigation into the undergrounding of Hume Link. And of course, we also have the fact that Snowy 2.0 has been put back by at least 2 years. So there is time for consideration, and certainly I think Councillor Armour, your proposition of 90 days to consider is very realistic. I believe, are we having a meeting with them on the 11th of this month?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think it's the
Yeah.
11th.
With transcript.
Yeah.
29th, I believe. Yeah, the morning of 29th. It's morning of the extraordinary.
Anyway, look, if there's no further,
No, just-
Councillor Thompson.
Only to support the motion as well, insofar as, along with Councillor Hughes and the Mayor, we attended the National General Assembly last week, and one of the most important aspects we were talking about climate and the use of electricity and the way that everybody's moving. If we don't get this right now, then our lands won't be usable for anything other than transferring electricity from where it's produced to the major city areas. And so I think it's really imperative that we as a community make it known that they can't turn food producing lands into energy producing lands without a significant impact, and not just now, but well into future generations as well. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done properly.
Just given in light of the fact that there's an upper house inquiry, maybe Hume Link are a little bit presumptuous in presenting their EIS.
Look, I'm not sure that it's a project that really is being well managed at this point in time. I think there's a heap of conflicting interests that they are finding it very difficult to get on top of. And I think that, you know, if we get an opportunity to ensure that there's adequate consultation with those people affected and the long-term ramifications for certainly for Snowy Valleys Council, but other local government areas along the proposed routes, I think it's something we should definitely pursue. So if there's no further comment, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Righto, item 9.1. think that's the next item, if I'm not mistaken. Consideration of the demerger business case report. Is there a mover?
I'll move it.
Councillor Hayes, Councillor Thompson,
One second.
Councillor Hayes, do you wish to comment?
Only to say, I don't think we can do anything but move on.
Anyone else wish to comment, or do you wish to go into committee to discuss this?
I'll move. We're going to
Could be a
committee.
good
Moved by
idea.
Councillor Thompson, is there a second?
I'll second.
Councillor Livermore, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, can I just clarify what the motion is?
It's to consider. So we're moving.
You're the option, the recommendation there. And
So we'll go into
We're in
committee
committee.
to
right?
discuss.
So
and
who wishes to commence the discussion?
oh, I would like,
Councillor Hughes?
Mr Mayor, I think the only option, we've got a bunch of options here that have been supplied to us. Option 4 is probably the only one that we can do. We'll proceed with, if we're going to,
Spell it.
the council submits the report to the minister and seeks a meeting, and I think we should do that as soon as we can.
Any other discussions on the issue? Councillor Livermore?
Well, I'm given some of the recent statements by the minister and so on. I don't know that it would be the best option to purely submit the application without first going and having a meeting with the minister. And I suppose that meeting could serve two purposes. One is to provide an outline of what we're intending to do or what we would like to do. But also might act as a bit of a reconnaissance mission, just sort of find out exactly where the minister's coming from. Now, we know recently in the media there was an article where consultants suggested that to demerge the inner Western Sydney Council was going to cost 150 million over 10 years. And it was sort of basically following that, I think these announcements have been made about, well, there's no money, we're not going to fund that. So, and I can imagine where that was the price tag on just one demerger, that will have well and truly spooked the government. So I think we need to be probably a little bit more strategic in the way we go about it, rather than just sort of trying to whack in a proposal and saying, well, here it is, you pay for it all. Because I think it'd be pretty clear now what the answer to that's going to be. So I really think we need to be working up a good proposal and try and work out realistically what the costs may be to demerge, and then have that preliminary meeting with the minister.
Well, I think we, at the moment, the minister has got the data that they've got on the table, which is contrary to Professor Drew's position. So I'll probably recommend let them have a read of it before to say, look, it's not clear what is going to happen if we demerge. Here's Professor Drew's position, which is quite different, and then go have a meeting with the guy.
Well, I think the point I'm making is, regardless of what the proposal might consist of, I think we need to have that meeting with the minister prior to submitting a proposal.
Councillor Idle?
I support Councillor Livermore's proposal. That's the way we should go. Absolutely.
Anybody else wish to make a comment?
Well, this is a final report, not a proposal. So maybe we can do all of the above. Put a final report, see the minister, and sound him out, see what sort of proposal he wants to see.
Councillor Arter?
I'd only make the comment that I fully support the demerger, but we have to establish with the Labor government as to what the costs are going to be and who's the bearer of the cost, because unfortunately, I think it's going to cost millions to unwind all this, and there's not millions in the bank to unwind it. So
The
No, the Labor government got elected on promises.
yes,
And their promise was to fund it.
Yep.
I think the number three is the only way to go. Just go in hard and say, here we go.
and that's what needs to be pressed.
Yep. You know, this is what you said. You're now elected. Carry out your promises.
From my clarification of the situation, the Labor government only promised a plebiscite. They supported 218cc when it was when they were in opposition. Now we find ourselves in a situation where they're not denying the possibility of a demerger, but there's no money. Now the reality is there, in my opinion, is there another way we can approach this issue? I've spoken to both our local members, both of whom are prepared to organise a meeting with the local government minister, Ron Honing, and my personal opinion is that I think we need to go to him with the evidence, e.g. Professor Drew's report, and ask him how he sees the best way to proceed. It doesn't lock the council into a decision at that point in time as to how to proceed. But I think if we can negotiate a way forward, it would be infinitely better than walking in there, putting it on the table and getting, in my opinion, what would be an absolute rejection of the proposal by virtue of this no money. So as to what we should do, I'm open to consideration, but I think we should indicate that we support the proposition to demerge, that we engage with the Minister for Local Government as to the way forward to endeavour to achieve that outcome, and from that point onwards, take whatever pathway we decide.
I think that the Minister for Local Government in the first instance should be invited to come here and address the council rather than, a delegation go. I think it's that serious that the entire council needs to be involved, and I think the local government minister needs to get the vibe of the community from the representatives as to the way forward, because we can't be. They've inherited the mess that the Liberal government left, but they said they were going to clean it up. So it's not up to this community to further fund another stuff up, because there's not millions in the bank. So I think they need to come here, and we've got the way forward from Professor Drew, and that needs to be put to him in the most strongest terms in this building.
I have no problems with that proposition.
I think that makes a lot more sense than just you going down speaking to the minister.
Look, I'm happy to extend that invitation and ascertain whether he'd like to have a yarn about it beforehand.
And invite, can't you?
Councillor Ivell.
Right.
There could also be opportunity, if we did invite the minister here, that they could address other councils that are proposed to demerge as well. So you could make the trip a worthwhile trip, not just for us, but for other councils as well.
Does that cloud the issue?
Do we have a plan B?
They're going to be here, then.
Well, they can send after us, maybe.
Yeah.
Don't forget that these guys, the former Labor, when they were in opposition, had a cabinet meeting in this very room, and they made promises then to demerge. So they're familiar.
I'll be guided by what you people think, but I think we've got to adopt the proposal to demerge, and two, if the council's opinion that we invite the minister down, so be it. If I'll be quite honest, if I get an opportunity through the good offices of our local member, Dr. Joe McGurr, to meet with the minister, I'll take them up on that proposition for sure.
I think that gives the local member the opportunity to be here as well.
That's right.
And I think it also gives the opportunity for the local government minister to maybe meet with representatives of the community, on the same day.
Right. Fair enough. Is there any further discussion in committee?
Didn't need
Can I
to be
say
included in the,
Yes, councillor Thompson?
you need that included in the motion?
Yep. Have you got that?
No, I'm just trying to clarify, councillors, what we've got up there as a motion at the moment is that Council 1 received the report, 2, that we provide the final report to the minister and invite the minister to meet with the full council to discuss the same, and 3, the matter be further considered after the meeting with the minister. That is slightly different to what has been discussed. Is it the intent to make a resolution now to commence the de-amalgamation process, or do you want to meet with the minister to discuss it first? Because if you start the de-amalgamation process, and that starts in train a different process before you've met with the minister. So I'm not sure which of those two you're aiming to do. Do you want the resolution as is, which doesn't have you?
I think we need to
Take that extra step.
endorse the process of demerging.
Endorse or adopt? Is that the approach
Adopt.
you're taking?
We adopt. As far as I'm
Endorses.
So what I'm saying is, okay, so that's what you want to do, but you're not actually putting things in place. Yeah, I know it's a pretty.
Yeah. Well, this effectively has you receive the report, provide the report to the minister, and ask the minister to come and meet with you, discuss the same before you take the next step. If you do it the other way and have it that we receive the report and we apply for de-amalgamation, you then start in place that process through the act which the minister's required.
Maybe it's invite the minister to discuss our method of demerging.
Look, I think
If your resolution,
council-
council, help me out with the wording.
I know.
council's
tell me what you want.
decision is to
We've got to
proceed down the
clean
path of demerge, which
Mhm.
I get the impression that's the way that we're leaning.
We
But at that point, having adopted the proposal to demerge, we then need to manage the process, right? So, if you say you're going to demerge and apply under 218cc, we have no opportunity to engage in the process. We walk down to Macquarie Street, put it on the table and say, that's it, right?
Well, I think as long as if you say adopt a demerge process subject to appropriate funding,
Sorry.
then I'm comfortable with that.
I think General Manager's correct. If we say we're going to demerge, the Labor Party's promise was to do a plebiscite to start the process. If we say we're going to go to demerge right now, they're going to go, well, you're not playing by the rules. We're not going to give you the money to demerge. They've got that loophole.
I think anyway, Councillor Thompson, you obviously have a word you should say.
Just a couple. Just in relation to the comment of Councillor Hughes is right then, is the fact that it is different because the plebiscite, we engaged a so-called independent review, which I have some doubts about the complete independence of it, but anyway. So that already has engaged the community to get an understanding and a feeling of what they would like. So it's not just us saying it. The concern I have is by turning it around and saying we want the minister to come here and meet with everybody. If that doesn't happen, because we don't tell the minister what he's going to do, he will decide whether he will or won't, whether he meets us here or whether he agrees to meet within Parliament House or somewhere else. So what you're doing is making it so prescriptive instead of setting the guidelines that says he has to be in this room. And look, let's be really honest here. The staff have had enough, the community have had enough. If it's, Frank Sartor once very cleverly said, if it's a dog, call it a dog, don't dress it up as a duck and try and sell it as something else. If everybody around the table is committed to going forward with a demerger, let's be respectful to our staff and let's be respectful to the community and let's just get on with that next step if that's what we need to do. Because all we're doing is, we'll do the next step and then the next step and the next step. If everybody around here really wants to go with the demerger, do something constructive about it. Don't make it so prescriptive and just let people get on with their lives. We're still window dressing and making all of these, almost having an each way bet. The time for each way bets are over. People need to make a decision. We need to give our staff certainty. We need to give our communities certainty. We need to make the decision. We need to move forward, and we need to live with whatever that outcome is, because we can't keep doing this to our staff. We can't keep doing it to our communities.
And that's what the recommendation says. And you're correct, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Thompson, let's consider the next steps. That's what we should be doing.
Yep. So if everybody wants to demerge, let's not try and put words that make it sound like we're having an each way bet. Let's just make the decision. Let's do what we need to do. Let's put together a proper case and go with the case and the report. Because if you hand the report to the minister, he'll probably hand it to one of the people in the other room to read and give him a briefing. Okay, if we present them with a report and a plan on how we feel that it could be done, then we can do that. But this idea of,
Right, okay. Councillor Larda?
Well, I agree with that, but I think, given the financial situation the council's in, there has to be a funding source. So we can say that we want to amalgamate, and that is the intention going forward. I'm happy with that, but we need to identify to the minister that we don't have any funding for it.
it's part of the plan.
Right,
That's what you present.
Plan.
Look,
Just coming back
Councillor.
by my Mr. Mayor,
what?
what I think we really need to do is try and identify what the costs are that you would need the funding for. Because that's the thing that has spooked the government. They've got this report for one of the demergers for 150 million. Now, whether that's close to the mark or not, I don't know. But obviously that spooked them, and the government are broke. So, if we go in and say, well, look, we reckon we can do it for 50 million, see, all right, we'll see you later. So I think we need to be strategic enough to try and identify what are the realistic costs of demerging. And because unless you can go into the minister, whether he comes here or we go down there, unless you can go to him with some pretty concrete costs that we can go with some confidence and say, we believe this is what's involved and this is what it will cost. Then we can sort of have a look at, okay, where could this money possibly come from?
Do we know that?
No.
Well, we don't know that at this stage.
And that's where I thought Professor Drew was supposed to give some level of information about the advantages and the disadvantages, and to come up with some idea of how much it would cost for the demerger.
So,
And none of that was in there. There was nothing.
so he's got here, we've got here 3.7 to 5.4 million speculation. I can easily see that as 6 million for us, but he has got no LTFPs
Long-term
calculated,
financial.
which is the one that you want to have us
Well,
come up with, which just means that we'd have to get a consultant to come back, do it all over again, go through our books, go through other process before we go see the minister beforehand.
No, I don't know.
I mean,
we need a consultant. I don't believe we need a consultant to do it. But those figures, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think those figures that were in Professor Drew's report, he was quoting figures from the Deloitte's report that had been done in relation to the costs of de-amalgamation. And I wouldn't like to hang my hat on figures from Deloitte's.
and that's only an upfront cost. It's not the 10-year cost that you were quoting from Western Sydney.
Oh, well, that's what they said. It cost 150 million over 10 years for their process.
righto. Okay.
I don't know.
Do you
that we
wish
were further
to
ahead.
stay in committee, or do you wish to resolve to go back into council?
Well, what have we decided?
Well,
what have
what's
we?
the outcome?
what's
We've
the
got a
direction?
resolution in front of
Well,
us.
I just-
or
We
a
don't have a
proposed
resolution.
proposition that we can consider. It's a bit hard to read at this point.
Well, I just want to clarify, and it's worth doing that, I think, before you come out of committee, because what's up there at the moment, which hasn't been moved, doesn't
Encapsulate what we
doesn't
want.
encapsulate everything that's been said, or all the two different proposals. So at the moment, that resolution simply receives the report, provides it to the minister, and invites the minister to meet with the full council to discuss the same, and that the matter be further considered after the meeting with the minister. Now, there was discussion about wanting to actually take the next step first and committing to the de-amalgamation process. That isn't in there at the moment, and I'm not sure what wording you want to have. If you want to put that in there, but still keep it open for having a discussion with the minister before you start the process. So I'm in your hands. If anyone wants to move a motion and wants to alter what's up there or come up with completely separate,
We need to have a
it's over to
discussion.
you.
We need to have a discussion with the minister so that we have an understanding
Well,
of
that's
how
what
to
that does.
progress.
That's what that does.
I'm happy with that
But
today.
if we're waiting for him to come here,
Well, it doesn't necessarily
Doesn't
do
say
that.
that.
It invites him, whether he says, well, I'll
Well,
meet with you, but it'll be in my office.
That's right.
That's up to him. We just submit the
Look,
invitation.
I think you've got to be a little bit more positive than saying that we received the report, right?
Yep.
I think we've got to indicate, are we in favour of a demerger or not? And I think my understanding of the comments around the table, we wish to
Given
proceed with
that
the
we've
demerger.
got two unanimous motions on the table already, I'd say yes.
Yes, yeah, I would say. So council resolves
But
to
it's about
proceed with the de-amalgamation process.
Okay, you want to be that specific?
Yep,
Put that
that's
up
my
as two.
opinion anyway. What's the general consensus?
I don't think.
Well, I don't know that you can commit to that until you find out whether the minister's going to bear the cost.
Yeah.
That's
It's
my
got to
concern is
happen
the cost.
anyway.
Yes. If we say we're going to do it, stuff yes, they'll go, okay, figure it out yourself.
no, but you have,
There you go.
I'd just
You've
say
got $10
endorse
million.
the report. Council endorse the report and leave it at that.
why? What's,
Yeah, right.
Well,
And plus,
we
we've
can
already
commit
got
to
to.
Commit to the
You've got to progress. That's
I
very
mean,
easy.
if the money's not there,
Doesn't
well,
progress.
then
Well,
the process will.
I think you need to say subject to funding. If you're going to commit to the de-amalgamation, you need to have a funding clause on it. Because I'm happy to commit to the process, but you have to say subject to
Yeah,
funding.
that's
Okay.
fine.
Well, we can put in subject to funding.
Yes, absolutely.
Council commit. Council commit
We put subject
to pursuing de-amalgamation.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, but it's like,
Pursuing de-amalgamation. Subject
to funding.
to state funding
Okay.
and return and make the next one 3 and the last one 4.
Perfect.
Is that what you're after, councillors? Up to a mover and seconder. I'm just trying to.
No, well, we've got to get out of committee. We're happy with we've
I'm happy with it.
exhausted the,
You just
so what is
read
it?
it out.
Can you read it out
Can
in,
make it a bit bigger.
Yeah.
it's a bit hard to see, right?
Can you make that any bigger?
I'd remove the word state.
Mm.
Well, isn't that what you're after though? You're after them
Well,
funding it, or
you may be after that, but that may not be possible.
Well, it's what you.
Well, look,
Top
what,
of start.
Okay.
let's assume that they say they're not going to fund it,
Then it has to come back to you.
that it has to come back to us. And, you know, there may be other ways of funding the process. I don't know, right? But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to leave that in there and that's a proviso and going any further, I'm not in favour of it because, you know, we haven't explored all avenues, right? So I don't know how you get in there, you know, subject to exploring the funding options and that we explore all funding options, right?
I think you leave it very open to the minister if you say that.
I think just leave it that.
Yeah.
Just leave it that.
Nail
Okay.
them down in the end.
Right.
In the first instance.
Well, okay, subject to state funding.
Yep.
And if they don't come to the party,
That's our only
we can
way.
renegotiate the proposition.
Yep.
I know,
That's it.
okay? Any further discussion?
I'm happy with it.
If not, everybody happy with that
Can
resolution?
you just read it out?
We've got to go back.
Read it out for me,
Sorry,
please,
go back.
Mr. General Manager.
That council received the report, Snowy Valleys Council, evidence regarding advantages and disadvantages of de-amalgamation. 2, council commit to pursuing de-amalgamation subject to state funding. 3, council provide the final report to the minister and invite the minister to meet with the full council to discuss same. 4, the matter be further considered after meeting with the minister.
Sounds fine.
So the query is, and what happens if the minister says, I'm not coming down?
Well,
We go there.
we'll go.
We'll go
As
there.
far as I'm concerned, I'm
get a
quite
bus.
flexible in making a decision. We'll go and see him.
Well,
We'll see what our local member can organise,
Indian man like that.
and we'll take it from there. Look, there's no point, in my opinion, going down to, endeavouring to make an appointment with Mr. Honing without engaging our local member. He's the best conduit we've got. He's obviously committed, rusted onto the proposal of demerging. He sees significant merit in it.
He also
I think-
has the ear of the government at the moment.
Sorry?
He also has the ear of the government.
Well, that's
They
one way
need
of
him.
putting it.
They need him.
And look, he's already indicated to me that he's broached the issue with the minister, and he is prepared to meet with us. Now, whether that's here as we are seeking, or whether it's in his office, I don't really mind. It's certainly infinitely better if he were to come here. He would be exposed not only to the full council, as Councillor Larder's commented, but be exposed to the community. However, I'm not going to die in a ditch over the fact that he's not going to come. He makes a decision not to come here. I don't think that in any way stifles our opportunity to continue a dialogue with them, and you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. As long as that leaves the option open, and I'm making all the total council aware of the fact that that's the way I see the way forward. If there's no further
Mr. Mayor,
refinement,
do you want that in the resolution?
if you can give
And
the appropriate wording.
So put in a new one after, no, it becomes, it becomes a new 4. So yeah, between 3 and 4, it's a new one. The local member, Dr. Joe McGurr, be asked to assist and participate.
I think you've got to put the other.
You've got to put the other bloke
Yeah,
as well.
and Justin Clancy, I've spoken to Justin.
Okay,
Just
Spoken to both.
I'll just finish this and then I'll come back with the meeting proposed in part 3. Part 3 above. And then change it, the local members, Dr. Joe McGurr.
And
Yeah, and then
a
5.
member for Wagga, and Justin Clancy, the member for
Call him a doctor if you want to.
Dr. Joe McGurr too.
Do you want to put member for Wagga Wagga?
Yeah,
Oh, well,
yeah,
yeah.
it's up to you whether
Okay.
you put it in there.
No.
I think everyone knows it's 2 local members.
So both of them are quite happy to endeavour to facilitate the way forward, so.
Is that it?
Is everybody happy with that? Righto, someone move, we go back into council. Councillor Ivel, seconder.
Yep.
Councillor Larder, thank you. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Against, carried. Is there a mover for the motion?
We've already moved it, but I'm happy to have that as.
Righto. Been moved by Councillor Hayes, seconder.
Who was the second?
Councillor Livermore. Any further debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Sorry, is everyone in favour? Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Unanimous. Carried unanimously. Righto. 10.2.
9.2.
9.2.
Sorry, Mike, I've jumped the gun. Statement of investments, my apologies. Any discussion? Is there a mover?
Yeah, I'll-
Moved by councillor Livermore, seconder. Councillor Ivell, put the motion. No debate? If there's no debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Righto. 10.3.
9.3.
No, sorry, 9.3. Quarterly budget review. Right now,
Can we have a resolution to accept this as a late report?
I'll
I
move
just-
that it be accepted.
anyway, someone move, been moved by
Moved, yeah.
councillor Thompson, seconded by councillor Armour. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Look, as has been identified by moving the late report, we've had this since last night. We've discussed it, I suppose, on our own terms with a great deal of, what would you say, concern about the fact that it's taken us a while to get to this position that we have some level of confidence in the report, and I'd like to compliment the people involved in this, because they've had to come from a very difficult position to get a handle on where our finances are at this point in time. And I think I'm not familiar with the amount of time they've put into it, but I'm sure they've put an immense amount of time into getting to the point where we have, as I said, a reasonable level of confidence that what we're seeing is the correct portrayal of the council's position. So if anybody's got a comment that they wish to make,
I have,
sorry?
We need to move this before we can talk all this.
Right.
We need to
Oh,
move
my
it before we
apologies.
can
Yeah,
discuss.
right. Someone move the resolution. Councillor
Okay.
Hayes.
Councillors, we'll just get that up on the screen for you if you don't mind.
Councillor Hayes, the seconder.
So we're moving the resolution.
Councillor Thompson.
I thought we were going to have discussion about it.
Well, do you want to go into? We've moved the resolution. You can go now into the committee if you wish.
I'm going to committee.
Hold on, Mr. Mayor, can we just wait a moment, please? We'll just get it on the screen. Receive and adopt.
So we have a mover and a seconder.
So I'll move that we go into committee so that we can discuss the reports.
We moved by councillor Thompson, seconded by councillor Ivell. We go into the committee. Anybody who have a comment? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Those in, anyone?
Thompson and who, sorry?
Ivell.
Ivell. So who would like to start the conversation?
I have a question
Councillor.
from
Hey.
page 5 in the notes. It talks about Winter Valley's Festival grant received last year moved for classification is correct. Now, Winter Valley's Festival, is that Winter Bites?
That includes winter bites.
Right. So now we asked earlier whether we could have a detailed breakdown, because we were told that there was $65,000 left in that in that account. Then we were subsequently told there was nothing, and so that had got out to the community. So the community continues to ask, and even the meeting I went to last night, they asked, well, where did the money go or whatever. So can we have a detailed expenditure of that Winter Bites, please?
Yes. Take that as a question.
Yes.
So I can only assume, if you don't mind me, Mr. Councillor Hayes, is that there are a number of questions raised at the presentation of in the workshop over the presentation of the annual it wasn't the quarterly, the annual budget proposal for next year. I can only assume that we'll be discussing those at the meeting on the 29th. Is that a reasonable expectation?
Sorry?
You weren't listening, were you?
No, I missed that last bit because of.
Well, we raised, this issue was raised by Councillor Hayes before. A number of other councillors raised issues that we wanted clarification before the meeting or at the meeting on the 29th.
Yes.
All right.
But two separate issues. The meeting on the 29th is to adopt next year's budget.
That's correct.
And I believe that had been addressed through the workshops we've had. The question from Councillor Hayes was in a change at the quarterly budget review, which adjusts and accounts for the grant that was provided to council for Winter Festival. I've taken on notice to provide you a detailed report.
But we asked for
those
that
two items.
at the workshop.
They are two separate things.
I only want one report.
Yeah, and that's what's up there. The other material about any questions, etc., in the lead up to next year's budget, I'm of the view that they've been addressed. We had another session today on the feedback provided by the community. The report on the budgets will be coming back to the extraordinary meeting next week with a recommendation for adoption. And that's my understanding of where we're up to with the budgets.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we dealt with $1.9 million under the broad umbrella of economic development, there was a question asked what we got for the money.
Salaries?
That's a lot of salaries.
It's a pretty simple question. Anyway, and Councillor Hayes raised the issue of winter bikes and the fact that we'd gone out to the community asking them to put in an application for obtaining funding for the activities, particularly that went on in Adelon last year. And we were labouring under the misapprehension that we had $60,000, only to be told subsequently that we didn't have $60,000. Anyway, look, yeah, it's you wish to proceed with any discussions on the quarterly budget review?
I've got my report on that. Well, I've not got my report, but I've got it. I'm going to get it.
Sorry?
I'm going to get a report.
Yeah, going to get a report, right?
Thank you.
Anybody else got any comments?
Only that I think it is really important to acknowledge that it's a difficult situation to get such a significant report at short notice, and we appreciate and value the amount of effort that's gone into it. But the community needs to understand that this current council is working incredibly hard to understand the financial position from previous times, and I think that while we as councillors are struggling with getting this amount of information late and working with the staff on it, the community really needs to understand how hard everybody, the staff and the councillors, are working to try and understand so that we can support the staff, but the community also needs to understand that, you know, there's still work to be done as well, and to please be really patient and supportive.
But would you like to, Mr. General Manager, would you like to just give a brief précis of what the third quarterly review is revealing as far as our expectations of the end of the year outcome?
I can. As per the executive summary in the late report, the projected year-end result following the third quarter budget review
highlights the fact.
Sorry, I had the wrong report in front of me. I thought the
That's
numbers
okay.
were fine. Project a result before capital items of 2.7 of a deficit of $2.751 million. That compares to the original budget that forecast a deficit of $1.196 million. That's before capital grants and contributions. After capital grants and contributions, we are now forecasting a surplus of $15.19 million in the original budget, which projected a surplus, including capital grants, of $27.61 million. The difference is a result of a reduction in the capital grants being received during the 22-23 financial year, in line with the work, in particular the major projects of the aerodrome and multi-purpose centre. Those projects are still listed to continue, but the grants will be recognised in the following financial year as the work is undertaken. The main change, other than the adjustment to the capital grant items, is an increase in materials and services of $7.84 million, and that is offset with an increase of revenue of $8 million associated with the natural disaster flooding events that were experienced in the local government area, the increased private works conducted under the RMCC contract for Transport for New South Wales, and the private works being carried out for Snowy Monaro Council at Bobian Road. So those two figures offset each other. The other key point that's been brought to Council's attention is our cash position. And as addressed in the opinion of the responsible accounting officer at the commencement of the quarterly budget review statement, the responsible accounting officer has stated that in his opinion, the Council's projected financial position at 30th of 6/23 will be satisfactory at year end, having regard to the projected estimates of income and expenditure and the original budgeted income and expenditure. And his opinion is based on Council's capacity to meet its current obligations. It is also pointed out, however, that the actual unrestricted cash and investment position may not meet the reserve policy requirements of $2 million as at 30th of June, depending on receipt of advance payment of the 23-24 federal assistance grant.
Very good, thank you for that. I think that one makes it obvious to the wider community what the situation is, and the fact that we are not out of the woods yet. So any further comment? If not,
Yeah, page 13,
page 13.
and there is a definition of a consultant there. And I think that probably is different to the definition we have used in the past, because we've used, I think this is the last two words, other contractors. So I think we've used other contractors before as consultancies.
All right.
So once again, we might find that it's difficult to compare years because the goalposts are just moved around a little bit.
I'm not aware of any change in the definition. If you clarify, the definition hasn't been changed in this quarterly review.
In this one from previous years.
I'm not aware of it being changed.
Righto, okay.
Oh, just one other
Councillor
one.
Livermore.
Just on page 13 there, in that same group, legal fees, 212,000. And over on page 10, under the internally restricted reserves, there's one there for legal. Original budget at 50, projected year-end result 50,000, and the actual 50. Just wondering how they align.
They don't.
over budget.
No, and this is the point. We have internal reserves for a number of things, including expenses, but unless council resolve back to use the internal reserves to fund them, we don't fund them from internal reserve. It doesn't happen automatically. So the 212,000 expense in legal costs has been met purely from
General fund.
purely from the general fund, and the reserve hasn't been touched.
Happy with that, councillor Evermore? Any further discussion? If not, I'll think someone move back into council. Councillor Larda, second. Councillor Thompson, thank you kindly. I'll put them, no further debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, carried. Righto. We'll now go to,
Recommendation.
sorry?
Got to move the recommendation.
Oh, my.
Been moved, just need to vote on it.
So,
Yeah.
I thought we just voted on it.
No, we've got to go
Oh,
back
my
into
apologies.
council.
My apologies. Righto.
so the original
So
motion.
the original motion is we
Receive the report.
receive the
and
report.
adopt the revenue.
Endorse it. Someone move?
It's been
It's
moved by
been
councillor
seconded.
Hayes,
We just need
councillor
to-
Thompson.
You just have
That's
to
right.
vote.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, carried. 10.1.
It was anonymous.
Unanimous. Someone move
I
the motion
actually,
or an alternative motion?
I move that we don't proceed with this allocation of funding.
We moved. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Seconder. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this probably seems really hard-nosed, but I look and it's not an insignificant amount of money. It's not as if it was $100 or $200. We've just been through our draft fees and charges. We've looked at our donations. We've cut down our donations and sponsorships, in this case from 80,000 to 60,000. And in the past, people have been given the opportunity to compete for grant funding or sponsorship allocations. And I just look at this, and this is the first time that we as councillors are actually seeing this, and it's been presented in a report that recommends that we allocate $8,865.49, very specific, in relation to a sponsorship event, which is, almost 10,000 out of a $60,000 pool of funds. And to me, if we're going to genuinely look at things with equity across our council region, it needs to have a competitive nature to it, not just they got in and therefore they get granted the money. And I also don't understand truly what $6,990 worth of traffic arrangement or traffic management is. So while I don't doubt the merits of the project, I don't feel it's appropriate that we as a council allocate this grant funding for something that we really know nothing about.
Anyone else wish to, councillor Larda?
Can I ask maybe whether we might have 6 portable toilets that could be allocated to the event from Snowy Work?
We don't have.
I don't think we have toilets.
I don't believe we have
We don't have.
portable toilets.
If I can-
Rotary Club in Tumba?
If I can just help you there, councillor Larda. The council used to have toilets that were donated by the Hume the Hine Trust. Council previously resolved that the Hine Trust take them back over. They're available if they were to approach. I think the Rotary Club in Tumbarumba organised that facility, so they're available.
So maybe just from an operational point of view, that this could be passed on to the Rotary Club or will.
So yeah, and look, the Rotary Club is the mechanism to approach. I think they have 3 mounted on trailers. So. Fair enough. Any other comments?
Well, only I'd point out in the report there, it's the second paragraph before that table showing the costs. That's sort of indicating that the group basically didn't worry about applying for any external grant funding. And then the comment there that a successful grant would have reduced the likelihood, if not eliminated the need, for council to consider providing financial support. So if groups have got an opportunity to go out, it doesn't need to say they're always going to be successful, but obviously they've really put no effort into going out and applying for some sort of grants that might have been specific to that type of event. So, yeah, unfortunate, but
Look, I think Councillor Thompson has hit the nail on the head. There's a process to go through, and it's a competitive process, and essentially this boils down to jumping the queue. Right?
Absolutely.
I just think that,
Can I, just in closing
Councillor
debate,
Thompson.
the other concern that I had was that they didn't even apply for this amount of money. They applied to council for funding, and it was up to council to actually run around and find out how much everything was going to cost. So they didn't even present and say, this is what we need. All they said is, this is what we want, and council staff had to do all of these. So while it's probably an excellent event, and if they would like to hold it again and put in a competitive application, but I think we need to get away from people also just asking council for money to do X, Y, and Z without actually providing the detail of what that entails, whether it be the cost of the hiring of the portable toilets or the bus, how much the bus would cost. So I think we need to streamline our process for any public money that we're distributing.
Well, I think we've essentially summed it up. It's a competitive process. They can spend money now for next year's event, and it'll be considered in the round of funding that goes out. It stays there until they need it. So, I just don't think we can continue the ad hoc approach of funding people when they bang on their door, to be quite honest. Anyway, if there's no further debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Righto. We now have 10.2 is the proposed donations for Councillor has left the room. Righto. Someone want to move 10.1? 10.2, my apologies. Councillor Larder, is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Any debate? Someone, what's the recommendation from someone?
It's to receive the report on.
We need to change that resolution
Right,
slightly, please.
Right.
To add the extra in.
No, just clarifying what we're actually. Yes, yeah.
So the figure should include that 8,000 that's already been taken out, shouldn't it?
No, that's been dealt with separately. This is
That wasn't
that was
donation.
event funding that hasn't been approved. This is donations as listed in the report, totaling 92,148.
So
that's a list starting on page 43.
That's right.
Yep.
So you're approving that list.
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Hayes.
Through the mayor, Hughes.
Hughes.
Hayes is over there. May not be fully aware of the Charles Sturt University scholarships. Can somebody enlighten me? How does that work?
Okay, that's not part of the resolution, but that's part of our community assistance types that have been discussed with council previously. So at this stage, we're only approving the donations, which is the last element in that first table. The other items just outlines the amount in the budget that we allocate to those specific programs. Charles Sturt University scholarships, it's my understanding is council historically has funded 3 scholarships.
That's correct.
At Charles Sturt University. I was actually involved in the assessment of the applicants for the last round, which was approved. And those scholarships are in play at the moment. So it's my understanding. So previous decision of council to fund 3 scholarships at the Charles Dartmouth University, and it's putting the budget in place for it.
Okay.
No further, councillor Ivel?
Just a question in relation to the school book awards. What schools are they? It's nearly $1,300.
It's every school across Snowy Valley's council.
Is it?
Mm.
Okay. Probably that should have been reflected in the wording.
Look, I think one thing I have raised, and I think we need to be mindful of, we've got headings here, land care, 2,000 kilolitre allowance as per resolution of 2012. Is 2,000 kilolitres still appropriate amount of water? If you look at the Tumbarumba Men's Shed exercise, it indicates that the subsidy is $8,800 odd. The reality is that it's not for the Tumbarumba Men's Shed per se, it's for the Tumbarumba Showground, right? So our Director of Corporate Services has undertaken to do a review of the way they're described in such a way as to, fairly represent the people who are, or organisations that are beneficiaries of this subsidy and are better described so as people don't form a misconception of what's being dealt with. So anyway, if there's no further debate, Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, the Adelong Progress Association community group donations, what does that entail?
Sorry, whereabouts are you in that table? Can you point us in the right spot?
You might be able to answer that question, Jess, anyway.
So second page
Just up,
44
up
is
from the
about,
bottom.
about 4 at the bottom.
5 up from the bottom.
That was a one-off donation.
But
Carried
it's
forward though.
Carry forward.
Maybe
I
it's a
can double
twice,
check them.
maybe it's a twice off donation.
Yeah, I can take that on notice. Our next donation.
Sorry, can I
Adelong Progress Association.
Is that,
So are we approving that funding or not?
so is that
I just want
for the
Councillor
post
Hughes wants
office?
clarification of what it's, why
What are we
it's
doing?
there.
Yeah, we just need to confirm what the note, the donation was for exactly, if it was a one-off or if it was going to continue. My understanding is going to continue, but I just want to find out.
Do you want to find out before you approve paying it or
This
after?
is donations.
So you
Do you want to exclude
Well,
that from the resolution and have it considered separately, or do you want to approve it and find out after the fact what it was for?
Well, it's essentially a donation. Is there a string attached to it, or is it
Well, we
just
don't know.
yeah,
No,
right,
no,
sure,
yeah.
question. Right, we'll defer discussion on this issue until the issue's been clarified. Is that acceptable?
What does that mean?
Oh, hold on, that'll hold up every donation.
No, I'm
Yeah.
talking about until we've discussed the other ones while Jess
okay.
gathers the information. We don't understand here like a.
Can you go and find out now? That's what he's asking. Who knows the answer?
You might not be
Well,
able to get the
The only
answer.
best person is probably just stepped out of the room.
Probably should
Yeah.
ask the one before.
Couldn't because he had.
Try and
What are
double-
you talking about?
Page 44, fifth one up.
Donations. Any other donations on the table?
But whether or not the word donation is being used instead of rates and charges, which
or
is
something like that.
because the rates and charges for the can of Coke and op shop are very similar in figure. So I'm wondering if it's something to do with the Adelong post
Would you take the
office.
chair for a moment?
Yes,
Deputy Mayor?
Can I suggest that what we do
I'll just
is change the resolution, continue after 2, the council approve the donations totally. You didn't put up, sorry, Councillor Larder, you can put after there, noting, yeah,
After report?
yeah.
Councillor,
No, sorry, can we just finish? Noting,
the Adelong Progress Association donation of
Adelong Progress Association donation of $16.50
Should say that. For the donation.
is to be clarified
thank you.
prior to payment.
Mhm.
And if you can go back, noting the purpose of the Adelong Progress Association donation of is to be clarified prior to payment. Okay.
Councillor Larder?
Thanks. I was just going to clarify, where does a proposed donation, there's just a dash, does that mean they haven't applied, or
It's not being,
there wasn't funding for it, or?
it's not being granted. That was part of a workshop discussion.
And so what have we done in relation to testing the hardship of these organisations? Like, how have we determined that the Tumut guides don't get anything, but St Vincent's de Paul, who's got multi-millions of dollars in the bank, get their funds waived? I mean, this seems to be farcical.
Look, I think this is historical.
I can respond to this. The history of the donations and the fact that these had accumulated over a considerable period of time was addressed at the last workshop. What council resolved to do, or what council's feedback was, let's proceed with this year's donations in the main, with some variations, and I'll address that. And let's do a full review and re-establish a policy for our donations that sets out a consistent set of principles for them. So the intent is to make a payment largely the same as we have in previous years, with one exception. And the exception that we've done here is with church groups. It was noted all churches are entitled to a rates exemption under the Local Government Act, but they are still required to pay their utility costs, water and sewage. Some churches had been getting a donation to offset their utility charges. Others hadn't. So what's proposed is that for churches, they will still get their general rates exemption, but they don't get their utility charges paid, which is consistent with the Local Government Act. So that's what's in there.
But in relation to the guides, they no longer use that building. The guides have moved down to the Anglican Hall area, so they no longer.
So they didn't ask for that.
No,
The guides, well, they don't.
No, they didn't have any.
It's just been rolled over, but the guides no longer access the guide hall. They are down at the Anglican Church.
And the Batlow Community Hall?
That one's Glenn.
That local community.
It's all done at a workshop.
I beg your pardon.
This is where we discussed all of this
Well,
at a workshop.
some of us may not be able to get to all the workshops, Councillor Thompson, and I find that remark quite disparaging. And I'd ask you to retract it.
Well, I won't retract it insofar as Councillor Larder is that we have discussed all of this significantly.
I'm entitled as a councillor to ask questions during a council meeting.
You are, Councillor Larder,
and
so
you're
you've
asking.
asked your question.
And I don't think it's appropriate that I'm chastised for making the question or asking the question at this meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, point taken.
Did you get an answer, Councillor Larder?
Through the
Mr. McGrath.
through the general manager to Councillor Larter, we're in discussions with the relevant community group there regarding a appropriate agreement, which means that it won't be a donation anymore.
Look, I couldn't agree more. When we got presented with this information, how it's a historical document, and it's, you know, council's, well, the committee or committee at that point in time resolved that we should reinvestigate the whole reasoning and basis behind these essentially donations. We got to remember that, and that's where there's a difference between the donation, right, and the others, because we're actually paying ourselves for this other stuff. But a donation, it implies a different outcome, right? Righto. Any further discussions? The resolution? Was that the resolution moved and seconded? Someone tell me?
Yes.
It's been moved by
Yes.
councillor Larder, seconded by councillor Thompson.
Righto. I'll put the motion if there's no further debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right. Okay. We're now at 10.3, local road community infrastructure, additional funding allocations. Are there any questions? If not, I'll ask someone to move the resolution. Councillor Ivel. Councillor
Oh,
Seconder.
I would like to, yeah,
Your second?
no, I wouldn't.
Righto.
don't
Okay.
think
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Armour, thank you kindly. Any discussion?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Councillor
Me.
Hughes?
Considering the light of our financial positions, would like to have put to the other councillors that these all will equate to an estimated 6,000 every year in maintenance. Some of them are important, some of them are not so important. I mean, I drove past the Hume School the other day, had a look at the how worn the road, the side of the pavement is there. That this proposed one here is the grass is growing perfectly fine.
About?
There's no particular need for the Hume High School, it seems, because there isn't. The grass is not worn in that area. So what do we? Look, I'm just saying, you know, this is a cost to us. These projects, some of them are maybe important, some of them may be not so important. But considering that we haven't got really much to throw around at the moment,
It's a grant.
but it is still $6,000 a year
Worth
that we're costing for
cost
the rest of
annual.
the lifetime of using these pavements and intersections.
Just in response to that one, the picture of the
Councillor
old Hume High
Hughes.
School there,
Sorry?
in the foreground, there's a little building sort of just poking on. That was my classroom. And it looked out onto there, and I can tell you that thoroughfare is very, very well used because it connects a part of the town where some people don't have motor vehicles and
Yep.
they walk.
Yeah.
And I think, and look, this goes back to right at the start of the Snowy Valleys Council when it was proposed, and they were seeking funds from it in 2017. So I think it's long overdue, and it will be an important link for no use to the school or anything, but certainly for the people living up there. I think it's an important conduit for them to get downtown, and as I said, a lot of them walk.
I think, Mr Mayor, if I can, if there's no sign of wear on the grass, it probably means they're walking on the road. So,
I wouldn't walk on the road, but there's plenty of space there on the path.
Yeah.
On the grass. There is a 4 or 5 metre wide space there.
Can I just,
Councillor.
the difficulty is, councillor Hughes, is that unless you actually get out and walk along it, you don't realise that it's quite a clayey area, and the fact that it has grass either side of where some people walk or push their prams or do whatever, in the middle of winter, it's not an ideal location or a situation. And as councillor Hayes has pointed out, you know, we have our major education institutions and located near some of our lower socioeconomic areas that don't have access to cars and vehicles, and they do have to walk. And I, along with councillor Hayes, agree that there's an awful lot of foot traffic along that area. And I think it's...
And since they put the fence around the school, they can't cut across the oval anymore.
Exactly.
So the shortcut's missing.
It's gone. It's gone. The one below it, which was the Franklin one, which was one that we endorsed a year or two ago, a couple of years ago. I think it's very much needed too, because since the school was built, that whole area there on the across the Fitzroy Street has all been developed as well. So there's a lot more traffic there than originally. So yeah, another one around a school, which is important, especially for a primary school with young mums with prams. I think it's very important.
I think footpaths are not a luxury.
Well, in a lot of instances, they're a necessity. to be
That's
quite
right.
honest.
Can I ask a question?
Walk through a bog otherwise.
I was not sure about the one from the brewery though.
Mine's more of a statement. I think it's really important. It's been raised by a few that we need to have a program where we're putting in new footpaths in across Snowy Valleys Council. And if it does cost us $6,000 a year to maintain those, that's the cost of doing business. It really is. And we need to keep this process going.
Well, if you were to listen to some members of the rural community, they'd be asking what they get for their money, and I assume the same applies in the town area where people say, you know, we've been paying our rates and we've got no appropriate level of
And I
service.
take their comments on board.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to enter debate, but I would
Well,
like
it hasn't
to.
stopped
No, it hasn't. But I would like to make a comment, because I think this is a classic example of some of the things we've discussed previously, and that is how fundamentally flawed the rate capping regime is. At the end of the day, council is having a long discussion here on a $500,000 worth of external funding that can provide footpaths for children to walk to and from school. To me, that's not a want in our society. It's a need. The fact that we're having this debate because it's going to create $6,000 worth of depreciation in the future. I mean, normally you'd expect to just bump over that.
That's right.
It's only being considered because we have this ridiculous rate capping regime that keeps marking our next lot of rates to our historical rates and has no bearing and doesn't take into consideration of providing additional facilities like this, and doesn't take them into account in the determination of its rate cap. So to me, this is just a classic example of how the underlying financial system of rate capping the local government is flawed and takes away the local democracy and your capacity to provide facilities for your community. Sorry, that's my
Very well
opinion.
said.
Like, I couldn't agree more. Rate pegging is the worst thing that's ever happened in local government, and a classic example is 0.7% last year. What planet were they living under? Anyway,
I have a question, maybe to the acting director of infrastructure, perhaps. But concrete versus hot mix. Why are we going with concrete?
well,
For footpaths.
it doesn't have to be hot mix. It can just be a seal. But
Through
anyway,
the General Manager to Councillor Hayes, concrete has a longer useful life. As much as it's more expensive, it doesn't deteriorate and maintenance is a lot lower.
It's easier when you
Hot mix or asphalt, we don't really have a production nearby, and for these lengths it's not overly efficient to supply. And then you've got spray seal, which on higher foot.
Not interested in spray seal. Yes.
On a hot day, walking on asphalt, no, boots are going to stick to it.
you know,
There's
walk
been
so
quite a
far
lot of
before you bog.
done. I was in Cottesloe recently, and they were just putting new hot mix footpaths down as well.
Yeah, I'm a West Australian.
Yeah.
Hot mix is used a lot in Western Australia, but you're laying it on flat sand.
Yeah.
It's a very different environment. You get very little movement in the ground.
Yeah.
Because of the
I
fact
think a lot of the movement we get from tree roots, which lift the concrete.
Heave it, yeah.
I've got another question.
Councillor Hayes.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, how did we come across, these are the projects that'll be targeted with this grant? This for once, I have to, sorry for beating my own town's drum, but a cycleway connection in Tumbarumba is fantastic. Battler doesn't have cycleway diddly
At all.
and there is actually there is no functional pathway to get from the centre of Batlow to the sports centre of Batlow without going across two very treacherous, very tight little roads that you have to go on the road for to do. How come that wasn't added to this list and some others are? And who came up with who chose these?
I could be helped out here by Glenn, but I'll comment in the first instance. And look, this came out of discussions or resolutions previously by council, including the resolution to put forward a footpath program, and in particular the previous council discussion and stated desire to improve the footpaths for children going to and from schools, which is the predominant parts of this. There is a small connection, which at the moment we'd be left with a gap down around the new roundabout between the existing footpath and the work that Transport for New South Wales is doing. So that closes that gap. My understanding with Batlow with cycleways, and your comments taken on board, and whether there can be funding allocated to additional projects in there in the future. But my understanding is Batlow is quite difficult to identify reasonable cycleways because of the terrain, because of the fact that it's so hilly. Mr. McGrath, did you have anything to add?
Through the General Manager to Councillor Hughes. Also, it's based on community feedback and submissions received in general. So a lot has been put in about Kappa Street, the missing link that would be left there. Obviously, the previous council resolutions, and also the road renewal in the industrial area of Tumut. It's getting to the point where it's not, well, it's costing us a lot of money to maintain. So the plan is to dig it out and put a suitable treatment back in. And the cycleway is again one that's come up a number of times regarding community identification of the need.
The cycleway, is that Spray Seal?
It would be, yes.
Yeah.
Again, a very quick comment.
Councillor
Mayor.
Ivan,
I use that Riverwalk loop quite regularly, and a lot of comments that I get from others users is, when are you going to finish it off? When are you going to finish it off? Because they see it as an unfinished piece of infrastructure. So this will tie that off.
Any further questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Righto, we'll now go to the Jones's Bridge 10.4 West Blowering Road. Is there a mover?
Mr. Mayor, is it possible to get a summary of this from council staff
Well,
or the?
we
Or the
need
listeners?
we need a mover to discuss it. So is there a mover? And
I'm happy to discuss it. Yeah, I'll move that. We
move.
discuss it.
Second. Do we have a, thank you. Move Councillor Hughes, second Councillor Ivan.
Sorry, what are you moving? You're going into committee.
The motion's been moved and now we're going into committee. Councillor Hughes, happy. Councillor Ivan to go into committee, moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now we're discussing the resolution or the recommendation, right? Councillor Hughes, would you like to have an item clarified or?
I would like to. Is there can we have the acting director of infrastructure, Shiz, give a bit of an executive summary of this? It's quite heady, even for the councillors, and I think even the general public probably would have it even harder.
Probably need Mr. Wilton.
I think you might be referring to the manager of planning.
Oh, I thought
You just promoted him.
you just promoted. Well, I put plural on the end of it because I wasn't sure where we're up to.
Through the chair. So essentially, a DA has been lodged with council, which is seeking a simultaneous consolidation, also a boundary adjustment of 4 allotments into 2. It is, for all intents and purposes, it is a subdivision of 4 lots into 2 lots. One of the lots is going to be used for rural residential purposes, for a dwelling, and the second proposed lot is going to be used for agricultural purposes. Now, in terms of this application, it seeks to rely on a clause within the Hume LEP, which enables certain boundary adjustments to occur in rural subdivisions. Council staff have done an assessment of that. We believe that it doesn't comply with the relevant provisions of the Hume LEP. And there's been a number of other reasons there that we've provided in terms of why the proposal shouldn't be supported. In terms of the actual two lots that are proposed, so one's on the northern side of the road, which is it's got a minimum lot size of 150 hectares. The one on the southern side of the road has got a minimum lot size of 30 hectares. And the four lots have what they call an existing holding provision over them, which enables all those four lots as one holding to have a dwelling entitlement. The problem is where a subdivision occurs in relation to that, it actually extinguishes that building entitlement.
So he wants to change. He wants to have a special consideration outside of the LEP as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, so the application, or the four lots as they stand, as I mentioned before, have a dwelling entitlement. So the proponent could lodge a DA tomorrow to put a dwelling on those four lots, on one of those four lots, in which, if that was supported, we would then request that those lots be consolidated. This proposal seeks to put a dwelling on one of the four lots once it's consolidated, and then be able to then subdivide off another portion of that land, which will be used for agricultural purposes on the southern side of the road.
So basically, the land on the bottom side of the road is suitable for agriculture, but floods, so it's not suitable for housing. This land on the top side of the road is marginal agricultural land where there was a previous house and will be suitable for rural residential.
That's correct. And the provisions of the Hume LEP would suggest, under 4.23b, I think off the top of my head, would enable a dwelling house to be constructed with consent and under an existing holding arrangement, but then the lots, both the northern side and the southern side of the road should be consolidated into one lot.
So what you're saying is they could build a house on the top side of the road and then later subdivide the bottom side of the road?
No, so there's no provision in the LEP which permits the subdivision of the agricultural lot in this fast view.
Especially that small.
Because that would potentially fall into a flood zone, wouldn't it?
Correct.
So are the proponents happy with that opportunity to have the consolidation, or?
No, they haven't applied for that. So they've applied for not at this stage, but they've applied for a lot which would be proposed for the purposes of rural and also residential purposes. So that's a lot 101, and then the 102 on the southern side of the road is being proposed for agricultural purposes.
Which is what it's.
They're seeking to subdivide it off.
But it's the same thing, really, isn't it?
Well, I understand it that if the person making the application gets their way, they can put a house anywhere on those four lots, including on the floodplains.
No. So as it stands at the moment,
that can apply to.
It won't get
as it stands at the moment, all those four lots constitute what they call an existing holding. So as the four lots on the outside, the actual configuration is an existing holding, which would then enable them to lodge an application with council for the purposes of construction of a dwelling house.
Yeah.
Anywhere within that holding,
including
the flood prone section of land.
That's not a good idea.
What they're proposing in this application is to continue to have that the dwelling entitlement on lot 101, but then subdivide off the lower portion to create an additional agricultural lot by the one process. And we've provided some case law there around it constitutes a boundary adjustment, which doesn't really comply with that definition. And we've also spelled out in terms of the use of clause 4.2c, which it doesn't comply with.
Look, I'm not opposed to what they're proposing, given that it's probably the best use for the land, and it makes sense, and it gives an opportunity for somebody else to have their little piece of land and build a house on. And as I said, it makes sense to me, so I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know how to get it over the line.
There's all the, we've already been provided with the conditions should we choose to approve the development or approve the DA, and they're those conditions are outlined in the report.
Essentially, they want to keep the agricultural part as part of their existing parcel.
Yep.
And then have the ability to sell off the block for another property.
They want to have that provision, yes, I would imagine. Which,
Well, I think the selling of the land isn't really an issue at the moment. The issue is a planning issue about the reconfiguration of the land, if you like, or the lot boundaries on the link. So at the moment, you've got 4 lots, which across the 4 lots there is one dwelling entitlement. Let's say, I know it's not quite the split. Let's say half the land would be totally unsuitable because it's flood-prone land. So, however, it would be pretty rich agriculture. I went out there the other day. They just ploughed it, ready to sow lucerne or something, I'd imagine. So
It is.
yeah. So it's it'd be quite a productive farming block. The lower side on the river flat. So if this is approved, then and I've got some differences with Nick over the use of clause 4.2c and so on. And the fact is, whilst there might be some interpretation over that, it's a clause in the LEP and it was put in there, I think, for this very reason. I guess a couple of the important things are that you've got one dwelling entitlement there on that holding, which is all the parcels of land. If this goes ahead, there's still one dwelling entitlement out there. Now, at the moment, there's sort of 2 parcels above the road or the northern side. So if someone wanted to build a dwelling, they could theoretically pick either one of those lots to put their dwelling on. And it's first in best dress. That would consume the dwelling entitlement for that holding. And in terms of dwellings, I think you can probably forget about altogether the land on the floodplain.
That's right.
Whereas this subdivision, there would only be one lot on the northern side of the road, which would take up the dwelling entitlement. Because the other thing of looking at that, if someone went, and Nick's quite right, they could put an application for a dwelling in today and, you go through the process and approve it. Then you're then left again with another block of land up there that's not fit for agriculture, it's not fit for anything. So now it might be in the same ownership at the moment, but that's not a guarantee because it can be sold separately. So
Can we stipulate that agricultural block has to be put into their existing lot?
Through the chair, obviously, if an application was to come in tomorrow for the purpose of a dwelling house on any one of those 4 lots as part of the existing holding, one of the conditions that would be imposed on that consent is those 4 lots be consolidated into one. What this proposal is seeking to do is seeking to apply potential dwelling entitlement to the lot 101 and then split off the southern portion so that can be traded as a separate parcel. Clause 4.2 was inserted into the LEP and in its entirety from 4.2a all the way through for the purposes of stopping fragmentation of rural lands. That's essentially what the purpose of that clause was about. Whilst there has been an assertion made that there is 4 separate lots there, so how can you be fragmenting land that is being taken from 4 to 2? Well, it still is, because for the purposes of a dwelling house on there, we would be consolidating those 4 lots into one. Whereas in this case, you'd be consolidating 4 lots into 2, putting a dwelling house on one, and then still having another lot to then be able to trade.
so technically, they could sell this in 4 lots.
Right. Without a dwelling.
Without a dwelling.
Well, that's right, just a parcel of land.
Yeah, but once they did that, there would be no entitlement to put a dwelling on any
No,
of it.
unless it was rezoned.
Sacrifice.
So if they did that, there would be no dwelling on any of it.
So if you were wanting to sell it that way, you'd build the house first,
Mm.
whichever block you
No.
thought appropriate.
No, you're not allowed to do it because you've consolidated the lots.
But then you have to sell the
That's
whole
right.
lot.
Yeah.
Exactly the point.
Look, I think what they're trying to do makes sense, especially in that area. It's not like some other areas we've considered recently.
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Wilton says. I mean, I can see why you would interpret that, but you know, from a practical point of view, it seems to be a good outcome. Nonetheless, we end up with another resident in a block that wouldn't otherwise be occupied, and the use of the land will actually become useful because it'll be still used as a large holding with those other parcels, whereas if you fragment it off into one block, it just becomes a hobby block.
Yeah, well, I think the land out there, there's only one bit of the land that be
That's-
useful.
well, that's right,
Useful, and that's the river flat.
Mm.
The rest of it's, unless you're a goat.
But that hobby, that the river flat would support the rest of the farm.
Well, there is other land about with these people.
That's what I mean. Like it would be like a proper.
It'll be farmed,
Because that river block would be
productive.
very productive. Absolutely.
Just add water.
We good?
Well, so what's the other option? Trina talked about another option.
Option
there's-
2 is at the back.
An option there. to
Option 1, sorry.
Approve it, and there could be, there's a set of draft conditions that could be used to apply to it if it was approved.
What page is that on?
On page 73.
So the recommendations already been moved. Secretary.
Yep.
The attachment.
73. Oh, it's on attachment, on the attachment, isn't it?
So has everybody read the option?
No, I haven't. I've got to go and have a look at it. now.
Recommendation maps.
Which
Then
one
there are
is it?
the conditions in the table that relate to option 1.
Land attachments, development from full.
Righto, so how are we going to progress? What's the general consensus? We've already moved the recommendation. If the recommendation's contrary to, or if the feeling's contrary to the recommendation, you can move that we amend that recommendation by adopting option 1.
So where's the, I can't find the option.
Page 73.
It's 73 for the
Right.
option, but the
Keep going, right,
requirements aren't on 73.
after the,
The options are in the table previous.
This is on the
Yeah,
statement of
keep
environmental
going.
effects.
that'll be,
144.
yeah, that'll be. Conditions, yeah.
Righto, where are we?
Coming out of committee.
Still
Now,
looking for it,
just asking if they've finished their deliberations.
Trying to find the options.
trying to find the option.
Page 73.
That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
option, but it
Page
doesn't
142.
outline.
Or 140 what?
It's a-
It's not, there's no 7.
Oh, well, in the business paper, it's page
73 in the business paper?
Yeah, 73 in the
That's,
business
uh,
paper.
73 in the
That's
business
not the
paper.
best, that's 140, so.
Business paper is another thing altogether. 74.
The business paper is
The business
73.
paper's,
No, I'm on-
business paper, you're in an attachment,
Found it.
are you?
Yeah, I know. I'll
Options, oh yeah.
thought we're in
got it.
attachments.
No. So it's page 73 of the business paper, and it has options 1, 2, or 3.
Oh, sorry, yeah, there are the options, but
Thanks, yeah.
then there's the draft conditions from the.
Right, and option 1 says determine it by way of approval. subject to the draft conditions of consent outlined in the attachment 3, right? So you've got to look at attachment 3 to find out what the conditions are, right? So, you know, do you wish to continue in committee or are we going to go into council? Is there any further clarification required?
Oh, well, I haven't.
There's there is option 3, which is to defer it, but I don't think that'll make the proponents very happy.
It's been a long time coming, this one, hasn't it? Look, I'm happy with number 1, but I'm just not aware of the draft conditions in attachment 3. Is there anything horrible hiding there?
You've got to go into attachments 3.
But it is approved. Yeah.
They're pretty much the standard
Standard.
conditions and so on.
Through the chair, the standard conditions we apply to most rural subdivisions,
Same as usual.
that we've just provided them in attachment 3 on a without prejudice basis, so that councillors are aware of what they're looking at in terms of making a decision relating to the proposal. We just didn't want a situation where if the proposal was supported, that a further report would have to come back to council with those conditions attached for councillors to approve.
So this is with 88Es or 88Bs or nothing?
No.
I'm happy to move number 1.
I'm happy to second it.
Don't you already have a move?
I know,
and a
I
second
Yeah,
for the
we're just,
recommendation?
we're talking about it at present, right? So
The,
if we're going to go back into the council meeting, someone move, you can move an amendment to the proposal that
No,
Yeah,
because
that'd be
it's
incorrect.
contrary.
You can let the other one lapse.
Contrary.
Yeah, you can vote it
Well,
down and then
it's
foreshadow.
being moved and seconded.
righto. Oh, okay, foreshadow it,
So it can't
righto.
lapse.
Okay. Want to go back into council?
Yeah.
Is there a mover?
Yeah.
Hughes, seconder? Councillor Ivor, we'll go back into council. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, against, carried. Righto. We have a recommendation that's moved. Are you all aware of the implications? Or is someone
No.
going to foreshadow an amendment
Well, you can't amend it.
or just shadow?
I'll foreshadow the number 1 out of our options on page 73.
You don't have to worry about it.
Righto, okay, so is there a seconder? Councillor Rada, Councillor Hayes and Councillor Rada.
Sorry, what are you moving and seconding, Mr. Smith?
So I'm just foreshadowing. So
Yeah, so you don't have a mover or a seconder for a
Just-
foreshadow,
just
that's
foreshadow.
just a statement. At the
So-
moment, you have a resolution with a mover and
So
seconder.
as I understand it, we put the original motion.
If it's lost,
And
you move
if
the
it's
foreshadow.
lost,
That's right.
then we'll move
Yeah.
the foreshadows motion.
Okay, so everybody's aware of the process here, are they? Righto, okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Lost.
Or
No,
sorry,
no,
well,
no,
it's lost. My
Lost,
apologies.
and we'll need to record who votes which way, so the motion is not to
lost.
approve,
That's
and
right,
who supports the emotion
not be approved.
that not be approved? Councillor
Those
Ryan.
against the
Those
motion,
against.
right?
Hold on.
Those against the motion.
Okay.
And the
so-
motion is that we adopt the recommendation, right?
Armour?
Yeah,
It's
hold
becoming
on,
very
so those
confused.
councillors were against, were Armour, Hughes, Hayes, you were against?
We're all against.
It was unanimous.
Unanimously.
It was
against.
Unanimously against.
That's pretty clear.
Pretty clear, right? Unanimously against. Now we have a motion that was
The motion now is option one.
Option 1.
It's been moved by councillor Hayes and seconded by councillor Lata. Is there any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right?
And again, was that unanimous?
Unanimous, right?
Plan.
Okay. Righto.
Thank you.
Ah, dear. Where did I end up there?
Well done.
Righto. Where are we now? I've just
Committee.
lost my place on this
7.
wonderful machine.
We're now.
11.
5, but it's 11.
74.
Page 74, minutes of the Eric.
You're
74.
now on the 11, the
11.1.
minutes of the audit risk
Righto.
improvement.
I'll move that they be accepted.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Idle, I'll put the motion. Oh,
No.
any debate?
Yeah, I'd
Right,
like to.
sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
Something that I note is that we receive committee minutes, and they make points, but we never actually discuss or get further information. And in relation to the ARIC committee, it's been noted within the minutes that for the independent review by Professor Drew, they actually weren't consulted. So I think that's worth noting. The other thing that they have noted is when they go over to the Amber projects, they actually clearly state the ARIC members noted the following regarding the project office report. The ARIC business paper was provided to the committee members to the beginning of May. Updated information has now been provided to the committee members in relation. They wanted to draw council's attention to the following Amber projects. So there are a number of projects there, but it doesn't, the ARIC doesn't actually give any indication as to what they think about the Amber project. So just wondering whether or not in the future there's that opportunity for them to give some comment.
Do you wish to comment,
Only,
Councillor Livermore?
yeah, those presentations that come to the ARIC meeting are basically the same presentations that go to council, whether it be in a workshop or council meetings on those things. And I guess at the ARIC level, given that it's about risk and so on, primarily I think that's the question we put to the people there, these projects. So it's one thing to say that a project might be at Amber level or whatever, but you know, what we're asking for at ARIC is really, well, okay, what have you identified there as the real risk? Like, what is the risk if it doesn't happen or it goes pear-shaped and so on? So in terms of some of those projects we spoke about, and I know well, at the time, the itinerant worker accommodation was one which was still a ways off being completed. So again, we said, well, you know, what is the risk there? And so council should be aware of those risks, and also with the Fago Organics and so on. And again, now I know since that we've had that presentation from the manager or whatever his position was on the Fago and so on, because anecdotally what we heard was there was a business case for Fago, which was predicated. So what was heard at the time was it was predicated on being about 20,000 tonnes of material processed for it to be viable and be a goer. Then we'd heard that because of various things happening, it was down to about 3,000 tonnes being processed. So we're asking, well, is there a risk there that this becomes unviable? And what's the repercussion? And again, so that this has come up in the minutes now for council to see and follow through with any of those if necessary. But primarily, as I say, the reports that the ARIC meeting get are the same reports and presentations that do come to council. So I guess that information is there. At ARIC, I suppose what we're trying to do is sort of flesh out which are the, you know, maybe the sleepers or the ones that might have some bigger implications.
Thank you.
I think the one thing that came out of the ARIC meeting was the fact that, you know, they're there as an audit, risk and improvement committee. And the audit bit, they seem to do reasonably well. The risk, but the improvement bit, you know, I think there was an issue that we discussed regarding improvement, but yeah, I'm not sure that we're getting the best value out of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee, but I could be wrong. Others might have a different view. Anyway, it's been moved
you.
and seconded.
Yeah.
If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 11.2, First Nations Liaison Committee. Is there a mover? Councillor Hughes, Councillor Thompson. Any discussion?
And sorry, just a query. I noticed that the reconciliation plan for council is they've had to ask for a 6-month extension. And I think this committee over the next few months will have a significant role to play in how our community hears or understands or gets the information for and against as we head towards a referendum on the voice in Australia. And just little things that concern me is that I'd actually like the committee to come up with a clear indication of how they would like to see acknowledgements and welcomes of country done and where to be done. So I just think we really should be looking to work on that reconciliation plan and to actually ask that committee if they are interested in putting together some information for our community in relation to the upcoming referendum.
Any further comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 11.3, I think. 11.3, the Minister of Local Traffic Committee.
I'll move that.
Second.
By Councillor Hayes, is there a second?
Councillor Oliver.
I'll
Councillor Ivell.
So,
Any discussion? Any comments that anyone wishes to ask? I just will make one comment. I did give an interview to the press regarding the roundabout down here and indicated that there appeared to be no sense of urgency. And I noticed that there's been a press release from Transport saying that they're getting into it. So,
Are you upset on
I think they indicated they'll have it open in September.
Look, nearly finished.
Well, it's been there for, well, I think when they start in 22.
You didn't
August.
see much difference between driving out and driving back in.
No, we didn't. Certainly it's very,
I'm sorry?
it's quite high.
That's
and-
right, the trampoline.
Yeah, and
can I make
I
it?
do notice that, the sun will still be in the same
That's
position.
right, that's right.
Except-
Well, I believe there's a move afoot to have it moved.
And
The sun.
but,
The sun,
but the trees that used to
trees are
obscure it
gone.
by the sun have gone.
Yeah,
and you're actually higher to it.
and you're higher to it.
Genius.
Anyway, and
Good plan.
I noticed the other day when I went through it, that as you go up to the roundabout, you get a better view of the sun.
It's really tough.
Anyway,
Good on you, Icarus.
We put it on, yeah.
you mean to say my wings have fallen
The
off?
idols.
Can I make it?
Only if you go to the sun.
Councillor Ivell?
In fairness to the crew that are working down there, they're working flat out. They've had a lot of holdbacks, like with wet weather. There was infrastructure underneath the ground that hadn't been planned for, so they had to work around that. So let's not poke
I wasn't.
them too. No,
I
I'm not
just
saying you were, but
indicated
I'm just
that
saying
you
let's not
see
poke them too hard because they're
urgency.
they're getting it done. They're getting it done.
And I find it rather fascinating that there's people there 24 hours a day, and I wonder if a set of streetlights might have not achieved a similar outcome. But anyway,
That
I
horse is
didn't-
bolted.
Hmm?
That horse is bolted.
That
Oh,
horse
yeah,
never
long
got
gone.
saddled.
We put some lights on with it.
Anyway, righto. Well, if there's no further business, I think that concludes today's meeting.
No, add long.
Adelon,
Page 84.
I've jumped the gun
Showground,
again.
James.
Yeah, I'll
need
move
to
that. I'll
vote.
move that as well.
My
Wait, then,
apologies.
no,
Had a move.
Anyone
else?
I'll put the motion. Righto.
for the traffic
Traffic
committee,
committee, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Is there any further?
page 84.
Page 84.
Yeah, item 11.4, the minutes down
Oh.
at Showground.
Right, my apologies. Righto. Is there a mover?
I'll move that.
Councillor,
Just with a
Hayes.
note, it says there in the background
Councillor Hughes, seconded.
that this is the first meeting that's formally been attended by council for a considerable period of time, but council officers, because I'm the delegate and I have been attending those meetings.
Any further discussion on the issue?
I need to congratulate the committee on doing a wonderful job. They've been very
Well,
diligent.
this is an organisation that, appears to be driving
Town.
the agenda. We want more people like this, more organisations that take responsibility, to be quite honest.
So I think next Saturday, they will have 40 volunteers from university volunteers staying there and doing a clean-up in Adelong along the Falls Walk.
Yeah.
Volunteers. So and the community is sponsoring that and feeding them.
This is the flood.
Well, I think,
Post-flood, yeah.
do you want to write a letter of appreciation to them?
No, I'll just tell them.
Just tell them. Right, okay, that's
Save a stamp.
Stay a stand.
Could I ask
Councillor
you, Mr. Mayor, just note that this is a 355 committee. A lot of 355 committees are gone, but this one is doing extra well.
Always has.
Maybe it's something to be said for 355 committees.
Very good. Righto, if there's no further comments, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried?
Move that we go into confidential.
Sorry?
Do you want to
Move to confidential.
move to
Move
confidential?
to confidential. Is there a mover?
Yeah.
Councillor Hughes, is there a seconder?
Oh, I can't second it.
Can't second, move and second.
Well,
Councillor
I
Hayes,
moved
Councillor
it.
Hayes.
Oh, you moved.
Well, it doesn't really matter. I'm
Councillor
gonna,
Hayes.
No, he's got to go first. He's older.
Seconded, right?
He's alpha.
God, love it.
alphabetically anyway.
Alphabetic, Hayes and Hughes.
Order.
Okay,
Put it to the vote.
put the motion.